and welcome to A Drummer's Guide to, the podcast all about the things that it takes to be a professional musician aside from actually playing your instrument. My name is Emily Dolan Davis. I have been a drummer since 1999, a professional since 2008, and helping others reach their professional goals since 2018, and that is why we are here. So today we are talking about something that was inspired by, before that, you'd think by now that I would get the gist. Let's start with a Patreon shout out before we get into today's subject. So today I would like to shout out the lovely Naomi Hayworth. We have spoken a few times over the years, but not much recently. So I hope you're doing well, Naomi, and thank you for the support over the years. I really appreciate it. But anyway, on to today's subject. So today's subject, weirdly, has been inspired by an essay that I had to do that I finished last week in my psychology and counselling degree. And it was an analysis, a thematic analysis of a text, right? Which is irrelevant right now, sort of, about the transitional period of someone who was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And sort of, it was a piece of text taken from an interview, and you kind of had to analyse how they were talking about the transitional moments in their life. And a big part of this was a change in their own identity. And it got me thinking about, shifts when things do happen in sort of life or in career where there is a significant shift in an identity. And I've been sort of reflecting on the changes that have happened in various points in my life, some more recent, some more in the past. But I just thought they would be interesting to kind of explore that as an idea and sort of personally how I've weathered those moments, because they're inevitable. I believe that, nothing is constant ever. And whether it's a transition in a small way or in a large way, just the way that you deal with it, I think, can be actually quite empowering, quite honestly. That's how I find it, at least. It can lead to an opportunity for, it leaves more room for other things to present themselves, is how I sort of feel it. Because for me, my identity has been in the past so linked to purely being a drummer. Literally, it's so funny. I went to see friends the other day, and one of their friends was there who I literally hadn't seen in 10 years, maybe even longer. And we were chatting and la-di-da-di-da, and then he was like, "Oh wait, we have met before." I was like, "Yeah, we've met a few times." He's like, "Oh, you're the drummer." And I was like, interesting that as soon as he clocked that, he knew exactly who it was. We had conversations about various things. And because I've been so aware of how I identify myself recently, professionally, it was so stark to me that is kind of, "Hi, I'm Emily, I'm a drummer." That has been my life up until literally the last couple of years. I think that's problematic in ways, I will say, personally, from my own personal experience. But again, I just thought that I just want to talk on the fact, really, just in case this kind of resonates with someone else, because I can tell you when, for instance, me as Emily the drummer, it was a real thing to think of myself as a drummer. When I started playing drums, it was very much, I was not a drummer, I played drums. And when I tell you, I was so purposeful about saying that and stating that until I felt worthy to call myself a drummer, basically. I was Emily who played drums. And I can tell you the first time, and like I say, now that I'm thinking back on this, it sort of added to the weight of this situation. And I've spoken about this experience many times on the podcast. There's a whole episode dedicated to it, which is A Drummer's Guide to Failure. I feel like it's the 4th or 5th episode of the whole of this series. So the first time that I felt the opportunity to change my identity to be a drummer, not just Emily that plays drums, it was when I got asked to do a recording session by a producer that I didn't know. He was a friend of a band that I was working with, I was playing with, wasn't being paid, it was like a band. We were paying for rehearsals, the whole shebang, and Visit a Q, for those that know. Afro-punk band, fantastic band. Oh my gosh, I wish they'd have done more. Like, even without me, forget about me. I just, that band, great songs, love them. So this recording session came up, and I got recommended because their regular drummer, a fantastic drummer called Johan, I think his name was, I'm pretty certain, he'd broken his wrist. And I got the call. I was 17, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, oh my God, this is my moment, blah, 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 blah. In my head, once I'd done this and, you know, I was getting paid for it and everything, I could call myself a drummer. And long story short, because it is a long story, go watch the episode if you want to hear the ins and outs. But essentially, I fell flat on my face to the point that I got asked to actually leave the session, leave the studio. They had to get someone else in to do it. I was packing up my drums, crying. It was the whole thing. Like, it couldn't be worse, basically. Just rubbish at playing to the click, rubbish at playing, like locking in with the other musicians, wasn't consistent, like wobbly, like not confident, all the things fell apart completely, from head to toe, fell apart. Got asked to leave, and I very much kind of left that place, like I say, in tears, with my tail between my legs, should we say. And it was the first time that I had questioned, can I actually do this? Can I actually be a drummer? And I very much was just someone that played drums. In that moment, I felt so inadequate, so less than. And initially, I kind of, and again, I've sort of spoken on this, I came back and I blamed the situation. Oh, my drums weren't good enough. You know, I had a little stage custom kit that I was recording with, which arguably sounds fantastic. And it was like, oh, yeah, I was trying to save face. Oh, yeah, it's because the drums weren't professional enough. That's why the session went wrong. Obviously, a couple of days passed, and I kind of was coming to terms with the fact that, no, it was just me. And as I've mentioned before, this was very much a crossroads moment, where it was like, right, I can either sort of hang up my sticks and be all dramatic about this, or I can actually face the things that went wrong. And it was like, right, how much do I want this? Luckily, a lot. So I faced it head on. But this moment of questioning this identity that I was working towards, it was so jarring, because to that point, I very much had been a big fish in a little pond. You know, my main playing was in school, and it was on the metal scene. And at that time, you know, first of all, there weren't no girls playing drums. There was one other girl playing drums on the metal scene in London at that time. So I was very, like, I was a novelty, as it were, which made me a big fish in a little pond in itself. And I could play. I definitely could play. I had good timing. I knew how to play a live gig, you know, it's what I'd always done. But in the studio, different thing. And this was my first foray into a professional gig where I was being paid, and I couldn't step up. I didn't even realise I needed to step up. That's how ignorant I was to the situation, which is fine. I had to learn that lesson. But to me, that was a really important transitional moment where, like I say, it was really, truly a crossroads. And as I look back, luckily I chose the thing that I feel I should have chosen, which is great. But it was actually an opportunity for growth, definitely. It felt hard at the time. Even looking back now, I'm like, yeah, that was really tough to face. But the fact that I did was certainly the turning point in my realisation for how seriously I was taking this. I thought I was taking it seriously. I just wasn't aware of the level of seriousness that I needed to sort of step up to. And this was a really difficult lesson. I can't tell you the pain that I felt throughout the whole of that scenario, but it is the reason that I kind of was able to go, right, I'm committing myself to this right now. And it was from that point that I was like, right, I am a drummer. I am a drummer because I am leaning into the things that I got wrong and all of that. So it kind of solidified my, like I say, how serious I was about this. However, I was so purposeful about not calling myself a professional drummer for a long time. So I was out gigging and earning money from 17, 18, 17, yeah, doing covers gigs mainly. But I was still living at home, so my overheads were very minimal, and I lived in such a way that my overheads were the least that they could be, for sure. Arguably, I still do to a degree. I'm getting better, but yeah, I live from like my necessities up, if that makes sense. My whole ethos was I just need to earn enough to cover my overheads, and then I get to get away with it for another month. I get to play drums for another month. That was my whole ethos. But at this stage, I was living at home, and I was just acutely aware that people around me were calling themselves professionals, but they were not earning a full-time living. And I don't know why I had it in my head. I was like, well, I have to be earning a full-time living, and what that means is being moved out. So that is essentially like what happened. I hit 20. And that's when I started playing with the hours, and that's when I was able to actually move out. And I was like, okay, I'm officially a professional drummer. Yay! So, and then from then on, it's like, hi, I'm Emily, I'm a drummer. Like, that was in a way, that was my goal. I wanted to be defined as a drummer in life, and that was it. There was nothing else really that was important to me at that time in terms of how people saw me, and whether that was, obviously, I talk about this probably more than you care about and would want to know about, but been going through therapy for years, but really great therapy in the last couple of years. And just, I wonder if that identification as a drummer, I was so obsessed with it, and I wanted it so badly because there was an element of being able to curate myself and present myself in a certain way versus just being Emily, and the mess that is being human and connecting with people on a very raw or imperfect way. Because when I tell you perfectionist tendencies, oh my goodness, I thought I had them professionally. Let me tell you, in life, it's a whole thing, and I think a lot of creatives have that perfectionist issue, if you want to say. I think it hinders us from connecting with people, for sure. I know it has for me. And I think that's why I held on to this identity so much, because I was able to present myself in whatever way I chose to, rather than actually just being myself, because that was uncomfortable for me. Very uncomfortable. Still is to a degree in certain scenarios, but I'm getting better, as we all are. So once I'd moved out, I was like, cool, I'm doing the thing, I'm a professional drummer. And as I say, I'd started playing with the hours. And I found that in terms of like transitional periods, once again, the time after gigs, after leaving a gig, have been some of the most important transitional moments, important learning opportunities, should we say. Because it's the other thing. Here's my thing. I think that the way that you approach, most things in life, to be honest, in terms of your attitude towards them, very much affects the opportunities that come back at you. And for me, there is a level of optimism that I try to find in every situation, which can be frustrating, and I have done it to the nth degree where I haven't actually acknowledged the negative side sometimes, to my detriment sometimes. But to be honest, I'd rather be erring on the side of positivity than negativity. A balance is good, though. I definitely think that now. Before, I didn't think that at all. I thought you had to just push down the negative, just ignore it, it'll go away. No, it won't. Let me tell you, feel the negative. It's okay to feel all the things. But why was I telling you this? I do think that the kind of the way that you approach these things does affect the opportunities that you have, because if you think about it, like being around positive people, optimistic people are going to want to be around that, generally speaking. If you're negative, I don't need that around me. Like it's hard. It makes life more difficult for me, and whether that's me and myself or when I'm around someone like that and you're trying to bring them up, and yeah, granted, maybe they don't want to be brought up, that's fine. But in terms of creating like a nice working environment, generally speaking, it's nicer to have optimistic people around. That's not to say you can't have a bad day, don't get me wrong. And I think it just opens you up to more opportunities and just being open. There's an openness with optimism for me, for sure. So I think that's really important. And I always remember someone saying to me, like, when I was having a really, I was really struggling. I think it was in fact, I'm almost certain it was in 2010. And I remember them saying to me, look, at some point, you just have to have blind faith. And I remember being like, oh my God, is that all? Like, that is the baseline of what I have to hang on? Like, just a bit of blind faith, blind optimism? I tell you what, it kind of works. It kind of works because I'm convinced that without getting too woo-woo hippie, I think there is something in the energy of that and like being open to stuff and things then, like, I don't know, you just notice things, opportunities, I think, more when you're open. Just open generally rather than closed and everything's a problem and everything's hard and there are no opportunities. Well, no, there won't be if you don't be open to them. You won't see them. I do believe that. I really do. But anyway, the transitional periods for me have been, like I say, the most telling. So the first, aside from that recording session that went all kinds of wrong, I remember another quite distinctive one was the time after working with the Hours. So the Hours was my first professional gig. I was with them for about 1.5 years. We recorded an album, we did some tours. There were some mad gigs that just, as in terms of like our first ever professional gig, there were some surreal moments, really were, and it was fantastic. I enjoyed it. It was hard. There were some horrible moments, like anything really. And I remember leaving that gig and I literally felt like I was in the middle of an ocean and like, oh my God. And I'd been away for like 1.5 years. I was doing a few like other gigs here and there, but I had to commit to the Hours. So when I came back, it was almost like not coming back again with my tail between my legs, but I think I definitely had it in my head. Now bear in mind, I was 20 when I went into that gig. I was 21, 22 coming out. And I very much had it in my head that once you had done one well-known gig with one fairly well-known band or artist, that's it, you're set for life. And it's kind of what I had seen around me, or I thought I'd seen around me. It's what people had presented around me. And again, this is before sort of social media was a huge thing. So people certainly weren't letting you into the other aspects of your life. Like players were known for playing with this person or this band or whatever else, or for being a clinician or whatever. And so that's what I thought life was. You get on a gig and then you'll continue to get on big gigs. Let me tell you, what a culture shock. Culture shock is not the right word. What a shock. It was just a shock to me. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm back now. So at this stage, I moved out. I'm not only moved out, so when I first moved out, I moved in with a friend of mine. He had a spare room to rent in Turnpike Lane, and he was charging me 60 quid a week, right? So fairly affordable. I was eating very modestly, like very modestly, and again keeping my overheads low. But because this band had a bit of success and I was regularly working with them, I'd moved out into another place in near Parsons Green, which is southwest London, with a singer. And the rent at that stage, I think it was like 400 a month. So essentially not quite double, but thereabouts. And at that time, when was that? 2009, I suppose. So my outgoings had gone up. My overheads had gone up. And yet there I was, end of a gig, and I was like, oh my goodness, I have no work now. And I'm now living in southwest London, which, if you don't know, it's a bit more expensive than Turnpike Lane, should we say. But anyway, I found myself in this like, oh my goodness, what do I do now? And it kind of, the realization that what being a professional musician meant, and the identity of that, if you like, what that meant was consistently working, but in multiple scenarios. So you couldn't just have one artist you're working with. Even if it was a chunk of work, You still need to keep up the connections with people back home, if you like. Keep up with the covers bands that you're playing with. Still sort of say, oh, look, I'm back for a month. If you've got any gigs that need covering, let me know, because that was the position I wanted to be in. I didn't want to be the drummer for a specific band, covers band, function band. I wanted to be the deck person because it gave me that flexibility, and that was incredibly important to me. So I very much kept myself in that sort of area of working with people as best I could. And then there were other originals artists that I was working with, either for free at the time or for very little money. But I knew that that was a good investment in terms of like expanding my network and just being out there playing, being seen, being around the London scene, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so this was a very important lesson for me in transitional period of just like, oh, this is the reality. I need to never be, thinking, oh, I'm leaving XYZ gig behind. I'm never doing that again. That's not how it works. There is no hierarchy when it comes to gigs. There is only working or not working. There is only making rent and not making rent. And that was literally it. And I had to learn that the hard way. In the following years, so from 2009, from 2009 to 2012 was kind of a rough period of time because I say this because what I'm about to say is sounds completely ridiculous in the context of what I'm talking about. But basically, I was doing a lot of covers gigs. That was how I was making rent, just about. Like, when I tell you, it was to the wire a lot of the time. But also, this is also when I started working with Brian Ferry. But what I will say is that it was part of his corporate band, which meant that the gigs were very sporadic. They were one-off fly gigs, so you just fly off somewhere for a couple of days and you come back again. So they were not consistent. I was not able to live on just doing the Brian Ferry gigs. I was still doing the covers gigs, all of that. But it really opened my eyes into the diversity of what you need to be doing to create a lasting, sustainable career. Like I say, they were tough, those years. They really were. It was really, it was very difficult. And then in 2012, that's when I started working with Cher Lloyd. So that was really good. That was about a year of work. 2013, I started working with Janet Devlin. We did a bunch of work. Then 2014 is when things really started to pick up. That's when I sort of found myself in the 80s scene. Well, I actually started off 2014 working with Becky Hill, and then I went into the 80s scene, and that was Thompson Twins, Tom Bailey, which then led to working with Howard Jones, which then led to working with Kim Wilde. So things kind of piggybacked off each other, but there was definitely a period of time where it was like, oh my gosh, do you know what? I've just realised I forgot the darkness. I'm so sorry. It's because I said the 80s world. 2014. End of 2014 is when I started working with the darkness, in the middle of all that as well. And yeah, so that sort of transition from my first sort of named gig into the reality of what it meant to be a professional musician was such an important lesson. And again, I think I've seen this before, I think I'm lucky in that my attitude coming out of the hours, it was jarring, don't get me wrong, but some people then get a bit of a chip on their shoulder, like, oh, well, yeah, but I've played these big gigs and I've played with this big artist, so therefore I can't be playing gigs that are smaller than me, I can't be doing pub gigs, whereas I think luckily I didn't have that. I don't think I did. I mean, ask people that were around me at the time, maybe I did a little bit, but I very much was like, okay, back to grafting. That's kind of how it felt. And in a way, well, not in a way, in a very big way, I'm very glad that that's how it happened. But in a way, and this is going to sound bizarre, those gigs were have always been my favourite. Little pub gigs. I don't know why. There's a real like earthiness to them where it's like, yeah, I'm really doing the thing, you know. It's really hard to explain. My favourite moments have always been in a room with not many people where I'm playing with people. I'm just like, yeah, this is great. It feels very pure. It's very hard to explain. But anyway, So again, this was a really important transitional moment, just learning like, oh my goodness, this is a thing. So anyway, as I say, I kind of like carried on grafting through it and ended up in this 80s world, ended up with the darkness, doing all that. And as I've spoken about before, leaving the darkness was a massive transitional moment as well, because it was the moment that I went from basically saying yes to everything and actually having a chance to reflect and say, wait, what do I want to be doing? You know, at that stage, when was that? 2014. So I'd been playing professionally for 16 years at that point. Is that correct? No, that's not right. Emily, your maths is shocking. 6 years. I've been playing for 6 years professionally at that stage. Is that right? Yeah, okay, let's just go with that. And it just afforded me the space, because I knew that at the end of that gig, when I left that gig, I knew that no one would be calling me, because people would just assume that I was still out there doing it. Because, you know, you just assume that if you say something once, everyone knows about it. No, not the thing. So I knew that people weren't going to be calling me. So I just thought, right, I'm going to take this opportunity to step back and say, and ask myself, you know, what do I want to be doing? Because I'd never really done that. It was always just whatever was offered to me, I said yes, regardless of the situation, the people involved, the pay involved. Literally everything was just a yes, despite like literally driving myself into the ground, sickness wise, all of this. I was up and down the country driving to the most crazy gigs, opposite ends of the country, night after night. And yeah, I mean, I loved it. I look back and I would not change a thing, but at the same time, it wasn't healthy. And of course it wasn't. My pure identity was, I am a professional drummer, therefore I must be driving to the ends of the earth to go and do these gigs for little to no money, which is fine. I think I needed to do that. But like I say, the transition between working with the darkness and the next chapter of my life was very much, okay, well, you've got a bit of a base now. You have experience, you know, you have contacts. What do you want to be doing? Like, I guess I proved to myself that I was doing this thing. It was happening. I was a professional. So now, okay, now I get to be more purposeful with my direction. And that's when I started my remote recording business, which changed my life. It really, really did. Just this understanding that I could actually live a life as well as have a career. It's the first time I've ever experienced that. And it really, really changed my life. Also learning how to run a business and having something that was truly mine was such an empowering thing to create and to work through and to work out. And you know, it's tough, it's real hard, but really fascinating as well at the same time. And had the split with the darkness not happened, I wouldn't have had the space, the mental capacity to even ask the question, what do I want to be doing, let alone then being able to act off the back of that. So that moment was actually incredibly important. And again, I think it is this sort of blind faith, this optimism of like, right, because when I started my remote recording business, let me tell you, I didn't know what I was doing, like not at all. I was feeling around in the dark like you wouldn't believe. But I did have this blind faith that I will work it out, because I've worked it out before. I've worked out many challenging situations and I found a way. And for me, that is something that I know that I can rely on myself for. It's like, I will find a way, whether that's researching to the ends of the earth, whether that's talking to someone that's already doing it, whatever it is, I will find a way if I truly want to do it. So really, really important moment for me, that, and just choosing like what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. So another side note to this, actually, just talking on identity real quick, another thing that I was very purposeful about, and again, this is something that I think I should talk to my therapist about, not you guys, but here we are, is I was very, very purposeful about never identifying myself as someone's drummer. So I was never the darkness's drummer. I would never self-identify as that. I would say, oh, I'm playing with the darkness. Oh, I'm playing with Kim Wilde. Oh, I'm playing with the hours. Oh, I'm playing with Tricky. Whatever. I was never like Kim Wilde's drummer. I was never Howard Jones' drummer. Absolutely not. And for me, it meant that I was able to keep a level of arm's length with people in terms of professionally, because again, it all comes back to this sort of like presenting as perfect or whatever, and not letting people in. It gave me a level of protection from getting too close to that gig. And what that meant was, when gigs inevitably ended, or I couldn't do, work coming up or whatever, that didn't take away part of my identity. Whereas I do see some musicians that say, I am X's guitarist, I am Y's bassist. When that gig ends, there is a real crisis of identity, confidence, all of that, because they don't know how to be a musician without the context of the artist, and they don't feel valuable as a musician without that artist and without that link to that artist, if that makes sense. So that was something that I was very purposeful about. Not for that reason necessarily. I think mine is more of a protection mechanism, but it has reaped benefits in terms of not feeling connected to the artist I'm playing with in terms of my identity personally. I just thought I'd mention that. And it's not to say either way is right or wrong, because I think there are benefits by saying I am X's drummer, because it makes you more invested in the situation, for sure. It allows you to get closer to people, to the artist, all of that, which I've never been good at, to be honest. Never have. I don't know why. I get weird. And I know I'm weird generally. So imagine when I get weirder. Not cool. So anyway, what was the other thing I was going to say about that? Oh yeah, so transitional periods. And of course, so there was that period of the darkness, starting the remote recording business, and then I had another transitional period, which has completely, like, when I tell you it's blown up my identity, but I've been rebuilding it in a way that is it feels so healthy, and so I feel able to just exist as myself, truly. And even doing this podcast, which might seem strange, because, sometimes I find it very difficult to be honest and not try and be on, you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. I tell you what, watch or listen to some of my older episodes, especially the first ones. It's very, I don't want to say performative, because that makes it sound like it's dishonest, but it's very on. I'm very on, you know what I mean? I'm giving you all the enthusiasm, blah, 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 blah. And whereas now I'm a bit happier, just sitting back a bit more, and like I say, not being perfect. If I'm having a bit of a low energy day, that's okay. I don't need to be high energy all the time. I think I'm naturally quite positive anyway, and I do choose to record on days that I'm feeling good, because I want to, do the best I can for you guys. Basically, you don't want to listen to someone moaning and groaning. Sorry, that's no fun for anyone. But anyway, this big moment of, so bear in mind, let's say 2022. Yeah, let's talk about 2022. So it's just after COVID. I was back out on the road with Kim Wilde, which was fantastic, really, really good fun. We did a whole bunch of touring. I had my studio, it was thriving. The year before had moved into a new studio that was part of my house, because I'd moved house. And basically in 2023, I split up from my husband, and divorce proceedings started and all of that. And I think that's the first time I'm probably talking about this. And basically, the whole of I was also doing The Voice Kids. Yeah. And then everything in my life changed. Everything. So me and my husband split. The Voice Kids ended up not getting renewed for another series, so that got cancelled. Kim Wilde decided to go back down to one drummer, so I was out of the job there. And then had to sell my house because of the divorce side of stuff, which meant closing down the studio. So when I tell you everything changed, like everything in the space of like a matter of months, it was so jarring. And that is the mildest way of putting it. But because everything kind of went down to what I would call ground zero, it afforded me the opportunity to just, how before, when I said with the darkness, I looked at my career and was like, right, what do I want to be doing? How do I want to be doing it? I was looking at all the best things that I loved about being a drummer and the things that I didn't like so much, and maximize the good things, minimize the bad things, right? And what this implosion of life sort of afforded me at that time was just a moment to step back, and go, right, how do I want to live my life? Who am I? What's important to me? What do I want my life to look like? And as it turned out, I recognized, and I will say, I started having some fantastic therapy, which really helped just to explore all of this. And it was very much like, okay, I've never had a balance in my life ever between work and everything else. Work has been everything. It's been 90% of my life, and the rest of my life had to fit into that 10%. And it's how I've operated for a long time. But this opportunity of like, oh, but there could be a different way of living. Turns out, really good to have a balance. I have a home life. I see friends. I feel almost like naughty saying this. I have time to cook. I go and I work out, and things don't feel so intense and extreme, because that is me. I'm an extreme person. I'm very intense. But to be able to channel that into different areas of my life, very fun. The other thing, I just living fairly simply. So I've downsized considerably. I've actually closed my studio completely for now. And I realized that I really wanted to, the things that I was enjoying the most were doing things like this podcast, which I've been doing it since 2018, right? On and off. But that's mainly because work has overtaken everything and I'm just exhausted and can't bring myself to do an episode. But I've always loved it. I've loved the fact that I'm able to help people. And then I started helping people one-on-one, periodically, sporadically when I could. And I just thought, why am I not doing more of that? It's so fulfilling to me. And again, it's because I had this crazy notion of identifying myself as a teacher, as it were. And I don't know why, I just didn't want to do that. Now I'd identify myself as a career coach, because I'm not teaching drums, but I'm sort of, coaching on music career related stuff, right? And that has been the most fulfilling thing, alongside this podcast. It's just the best. I get to live vicariously through my students and all of the wonderful things that they're doing. And it's so inspiring to me. And I just love it so much. And seeing all the progress and the hard work that they're putting in, and when they have down moments and I get to be there and be like, it's fine. You're going to be able to do this. Why have you thought about this? Should we try this? And I adore it. And it's one of my favorite things that I've sort of chosen to do. Also studying my degree, started doing that, in fairness, started doing that in 2022, I think, 2021, I don't know. But being able to lean more into that has just been absolutely fantastic as well. And just that transitional moment of what was literally life imploding situation. I didn't know anything. I was just but then all of the options opened up to me. And although, it was slightly overwhelming when I started to actually make decisions for myself, it was as my therapist, which goes, because before I was not, she said, you need to put yourself on the ledger. And what she meant was on the ledger of other people and what you're doing. The choices that I made were always with other people in mind. People asking me to do work. It didn't even ever occur to me that I would ask myself, do I want to actually be doing this? It was always just a hard yes, because people were asking, therefore I should just say yes. It was never a question. Whereas now I'm like, oh, no, I feel like I have more choice at the moment. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. Like I say, balance, which is a new concept to me, but I'm really enjoying it. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that in terms of transitional moments, identity. I don't actually know what I'm going to call this episode yet, but something around that, because I think it's how you handle those transitional moments that are very important, because I do find that they're the moments that a lot of people that I know, that's when they throw in the towel and they're like, too hard, I'm not facing this. Whereas, I just feel like I'm so lucky for various reasons that I was able to, whether that's because of mindset, whether that was because of the means that I had at the time, those transitional moments that could have been the moment that I go, you know what, I'm done, have instead been moments of okay, let me notice how I'm feeling about this. I I have space now to choose something different if I want, or choose more of the same. Plenty of times that those things have happened, I've gone, right, oh, I need more of this, you know what I mean? But those are the ones where I've kind of shifted trajectory slightly, and whether that's led to completely new areas to live alongside my live playing and all of that, or whether they're just completely different ways of living, like currently, it's just been very interesting kind of looking retrospectively on this. And as I say, this all came from an essay that I had to do, and I was just thinking about it, and I was like, yeah, no, those transitional moments are so important, but I don't feel like, I haven't really heard people talk about them that much. I suppose because there's a lot of shame involved with them, because it's always through like losing something, or something changing, maybe it's out of your hands, all of that. I just thought, well, you know me, I like to talk about stuff that people aren't talking about, so here I am. What can I say? Anyway, I hope that this has helped you in some way. I really do, actually, because this is a weird one for me, and the fact that I've even explicitly addressed the fact that I've been essentially going through a divorce for the last 2 years is quite terrifying for me, I'm not gonna lie, but got to open ourselves up to these things sometime, I suppose, be a bit vulnerable. Here I am, imperfect, but yeah, anyway, if you enjoyed this episode, please do feel free to like, share and subscribe. If you would like to have a very specific question answered on a future episode, if you go to emilyjohns.com/AMA, you can ask me anything you like. Please leave your name if you want a name check as well. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, you can go to @HeyEmilyDrums. If you would like to support this podcast on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/EmilyDrums. And if you'd like some one-on-one coaching with me, you can book in for a free discovery call at emilydrums.com. That is it from me today. Sending you lots and lots of love and hugs wherever you are, whatever you're up to, and I will see you next week for another subject. All right, see you later. Bye.